Good morning. My name is Beth Freeman, and I am the Career Readiness Coordinator for the Kearney School District. I'm also a member of a group called NEBA, which is the Northland Education and Business Alliance, and we have come together today to host this special event for everyone at home. NEBA is a network of education and business organizations in Clay and Platte counties whose vision is to promote and provide business-driven educational opportunities for you, our next generation of business leaders. I will be your host during this session, and we also have two other NEBA members who are helping. We've got Natalie Barner from the Park Hill School District, and we've got Amy Washam from Northwest Missouri State University, and they are going to help keep the conversation going, keep the techie stuff going in the background, and help out today. Just a quick couple of notes before we start our session and introduce our guest speakers. This session will run for 40 minutes. And so we will try to wrap things up just about a minute or so before that. Our industry experts will begin by sharing their professional history and insight, but we want this to feel more like a conversation after that. So you will notice at the bottom of your screen, you have an opportunity to type in some questions that we can have answered by our industry professionals. Unfortunately, we may not be able to get to all of them, but we will definitely do our best to try. Let's see, when the session ends, you'll be asked to take a very short survey. Make sure to give us some feedback so we, as the NEBA group, can take that into account and in our planning for future events. Make sure that we're giving you what you need and changing anything that you feel is necessary. Okay, let's get started. I would like to go ahead and introduce our panelists for this session. Adam Hill from Scarbrough and Chris Gutierrez from KC SmartPort. So I think we'll go ahead with Chris and have him give us some professional background and just give us a little introduction about himself.
Great, thank you, Beth. Good morning, students. I applaud you for being involved in this program and programs like this. It is you that are going to, as the governor said, take us forward. Difficult times right now, but appreciate your engagement and looking towards what your opportunities are in school and beyond school. So I'm Chris Gutierrez. I'm with a group called Kansas City SmartPort. We're the regional economic development group for the greater metropolitan area, both Kansas and Missouri. It's 18 counties, 50 communities. And my job is to market this region for new companies to locate their facilities here. Companies that are what we call freight-based companies. So manufacturing, distribution, warehousing companies, making sure they know how great it is in this Kansas City region and locate facilities here and not go to places like Dallas or Chicago or Indianapolis. It's a great time right now, unfortunately, during this pandemic, but industrial development, what I work on, is going gangbusters. There's a lot of new companies locating here, mainly in the e-commerce world, as we all sit at home and order online, and food production, food distribution. So it's very exciting. My past is a little kind of crisscross to get to where I am now. I'm an Ohio resident, born and raised in Ohio, and I studied international business and marketing at college and became an economic developer for the state of Missouri a long time ago, helping companies look at international trade opportunities, selling their products from Missouri to other parts of the world, and also helping companies from around the world invest in Missouri. Been doing that for about 30 plus years and have landed in this opportunity in Kansas City for the last 17. And I'll tell you, the governor said it right. I'm going to say it harder about Kansas City. As you move forward, stay in this region. Be like Beth that went back home to Kearney. Stay in the region. There's opportunities. It's a great environment. There's so much to do in Kansas City. And the career opportunities are significant here. So I applaud you again. Look forward to the questions that'll come later.
Thank you so much. Adam, would you like to give us a little background about yourself and your professional history?
Sure. Thanks, Beth. Good morning, students. These are always fun. I enjoy sitting down in front of you all, and this is as good as it gets right now from a virtual standpoint. But like Beth said, my name is Adam Hill. I'm the president and chief operating officer of the Scarbrough group of companies. So we're actually a group of 6 operating companies that does everything from international freight to trucking to domestic freight to customs brokerage and a bunch of stuff that you all probably mostly take for granted right now. And it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of interest in for those of you who are interested in doing something that's maybe not the norm. We always joke that no one ever says they want to grow up and be a freight forwarder. Well, maybe we can change that one of these days and get some of you interested a little bit earlier. My professional background was I was born locally, Gladstone. I was in the North Kansas City School District. Went to William Jewell College to play baseball a few years ago, and while there, I actually received an internship at Scarbrough. And from there, I have worked my way up at Scarbrough. I spent a little bit of time in another office of ours until January of last year when I took over as president of the group. So that's my short little story about me. And like Chris said, stay in Kansas City. There's a lot of neat stuff going on around here.
Thank you, Adam. So before we move forward, I do want to remind everybody at home that there is the opportunity to type in any questions in the Q&A box you see at the bottom. So we welcome questions. We want to hear from you at home. We want to help you out and get you the information that you were hoping to receive today. So until we see some questions up there, Natalie, would you like to get us started?
I would love to. Thank you. I think a question that we always have, and especially in this day and age with everything being via Zoom, but in a normal day, what is the hardest part of your job before the pandemic hit? What is the hardest thing that you've had to do with your job?
Like the transition from pre-pandemic to now?
Yes.
So for me, our company has about 110 employees and we have 7 offices. So pre-pandemic, I spent a lot of time on the road. Probably 40 to 50% of the year I traveled, whether it was between offices, whether it was around the world, somewhere else in the United States. So transitioning home for me was actually somewhat difficult. My wife and I had a system. I was gone half the time and that's just how it worked. And then I came home full time and it was really interesting. And so for me, the transition kind of out of that day to day, I know Chris traveled a lot too. And so that transition back was really interesting. And then trying to get back out in front of your customers, right? It used to be we traveled and visited everyone. And early on, I don't think any of us were quite ready to be home for 7 months. I think most of us thought, it might be a few weeks, right? It might be a month. And so a lot of the changes that we've had is customer facing. How do we make sure that we're still taking care of our customers? Because ultimately they're the ones that write our paychecks every couple of weeks. So it was really interesting. But one of the things that we found that's been fun is that I can be in New York at 9 o'clock in the morning, Houston at 9:30, Chicago at 10, and Los Angeles at 11, all in the same morning. And I wasn't able to do that previously. So what we found is we can actually give more attention to our client base, which has been something that we weren't quite expecting as we came through all of this. But getting them to be okay with this kind of a medium has been really interesting, including my own team. When we first started, we had a lot of people. I told everybody, you have to turn your camera on. You have to turn your camera on. And it took everyone a while to get their cameras on and get used to it. But so, it's been fun. It's been a really interesting time. And our industry has seen massive amount of change in the last 6 and 7 months that we probably haven't seen combined in the last 6 and 7 years.
Thank you.
And Natalie, just to add to that, I think before COVID, the biggest challenge we had was to get people to think about Kansas City. We know how great it is, but If people have never visited the Kansas City region, they generally don't have a negative perception. They just don't know a lot about it. So we talk about the importance of the visit. And again, this is pre-COVID. Getting people to Kansas City, they immediately engage. They immediately recognize what a great place to do business, what a great place to live. So that was a big part of pre-COVID. And as Adam said, I don't travel as much as Adam. Mostly mine is domestic, but I travel a lot. And the last time I traveled was mid-February. So in a COVID environment, I think Adam hit it right. You have to be, the word we use is intentional, because you're sitting in a different environment. You're not going to call on those customers. You're not reaching out. I'm going to be in Houston on Friday. It has to be intentionally sitting wherever you're working remotely to connect to your customers, connect to future customers, your business partners, and just engage with them. And again, this technology, Zoom, was with us before COVID, but I don't think any of us realized how significant it can be. And I think even in a post-COVID world, you're going to see people using this video technology to stay connected. Like Adam said, he can be around the world in 4 hours and never leave his office. So I think it has potential, even though the face-to-face is critical for us to get back to when it's safe.
Great, thank you. I know we have a lot of students on here that might not have any base of knowledge about the industry you guys are in. So could you just explain a little bit, just a basic explanation of what the industry is and what they do, or what, I know you guys talked about what you do on a day-to-day basis and what your positions are, but what about the industry in general?
Go ahead, Adam.
All right. Well, so our industry is a massive industry that nobody really ever talks about. So we're very hidden. And so if you go into the store today and you want to buy something, or you wait for UPS to deliver something to your door, everything that got that product from the point that it was originally made, whether that's down the street, whether that's in Shanghai, China, whether that's in Sao Paulo, Brazil, what our companies do is we help our customers move that product here to ultimately get it to you and put it in a store so you can go buy it. From the freight that rides on the back of a truck, if you're in Kansas City, you might have seen one of our trucks running around town. So our industry touches everything from the time that somebody makes a good to the time that it's time for you to go buy it. That entire middle chunk is where we sit. And that's the work that we do day in and day out. Whether that is in a warehouse where we have people on forklifts picking packages that then we send out, we provide to UPS so they can deliver to your door, or whether that is moving freight inside of a 40-foot ocean container from Shanghai to Kansas City.
And for me, Natalie, economic development is about selling this region. It's kind of hard to say it's not a product, but making sure that companies know what's happening in Kansas City from a labor perspective. All the students on the call right now, that we're building a workforce for them. The real estate, there's available buildings or pieces of land for them to do their business on. Incentives, which state and local communities give incentives for companies to locate in a certain region versus another. And then all around just the kind of state of opportunity in Kansas City, quality of life, moving people here, business environment. So it's what I'll call a relationship marketing. You're talking about this to clients and their consultants. So economic development is a little bit unique. But since I focus on freight, it's everything Adam just said, understanding the benefits of Kansas City from a transportation, logistics, a warehousing benefit as well. So you have to keep up with what's happening in the logistics industry. And you've got to give credit to UPS. They came out with I Heart Logistics that made people start thinking about it. And now every one of us knows our UPS driver because we're at home and see them. It is critical to get everything we do, as Adam said, to the store shelf and ultimately to you, the customer, in logistics.
Great, thank you. Another question kind of related to the one you guys just answered is, how much do the trains that we see in Kansas City, how much do you work with them, and what effect do they have with you?
So the trains are really interesting here in Kansas City. So Kansas City is actually the second largest train hub in the United States. We were number one all the way up until probably 7 or 8 years ago when we finally lost it to Chicago. And there's a rich history of the railroad in Kansas City because of the cattle and really where the stockyards and that's where, and because of Kansas City's central location, we were really the melting point of the US that said we're right in the middle, whether it's north, south, east, west. And so we work with the railroads a ton. The Kansas City Southern, a local railroad here, does a lot of work to and from Mexico. They're one of the few railroad lines that runs that route. And so that's really interesting. That is definitely a Kansas City based company. And then you have all of the other big tier class 1 railroads, the Burlington Northern, the Union Pacific, all running through here as well. So Kansas City has a very rich train history and rail history. And I know Chris's group is doing some neat stuff, hopefully with maybe a Hyperloop, right? The next version of a train one of these days.
Yeah, Adam said everything on the rail industry. They're a critical part of our economy and continue to grow. And Hyperloop, if you've seen highlights of it, it's a new mode of transportation. Kansas City to St. Louis has a real opportunity to be the first commercial route. For those of you on the call that have driven that 4-hour route on Hyperloop, it'll be 30 minutes from Kansas City to St. Louis. You can go send people from St. Louis to eat our great barbecue and they go home in the same evening. So it's an incredible piece of technology moving people and freight that is coming.
Is it, so it is still in the works? I haven't heard much about it recently.
They made a mistake and selected another city to do their certification center, but the commercial route to actually move people and freight is still moving forward. Potentially within the next 10 years, you can see construction started to move that line through Kansas City to St. Louis.
Wow, that will be fascinating. Chris, I know you have to hop off in about 10 minutes, and we did have a question for you, and you might have answered some of this, but didn't know if you wanted to talk about it anymore. What sectors of the industry do you work with, and just how robust is what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, pre-COVID and even more so during COVID, e-commerce and the ability for all of us to order online. And as Adam said, that's easy for us to do on a couple buttons, but then the companies have to get that product to you. So we've seen a lot of e-commerce companies like Chewy.com, Urban Outfitters, a few others locate facilities in Kansas City to be able to serve a Midwest market when you order online. Amazon as well. Walmart has facilities here. Walmart just reported in their third quarter, their e-commerce online sales jumped 79%. They suggested they took a 5-year jump that they projected to have in a month. That's how much online sales are happening. So UPS, FedEx, so e-commerce, very big. The other is food, Natalie. We're seeing so much changes in how we eat, what we eat, how we get our food, how we get it at the grocery store, what ingredients we use. So food distribution, a new term called food on demand. And again, even pre-COVID, even more so now with COVID. And then food production is a big sector. And then the one that is consistently growing in Kansas City is the automotive sector with Ford and General Motors and the suppliers. If you've seen the announcement, Ford will make their 15-passenger transit van an electric version here in Kansas City. $150 million in new expansion for them. Great opportunity for Kansas City. So those three are key sectors, and all are very active right now. Even in the pandemic situation we're in, we're very busy in those.
Great, thank you. We have a question from an attendee in the audience. What makes New York and LA a bigger market than Kansas City? What sets them apart?
I'll give my 2 cents and then Adam can add. They're obviously much bigger population centers. And from an international standpoint, there's a recognition of those cities by international businesses, tourists to go there. But for us, they're overcrowded, higher cost, cost of resident, your house, your food is so much more expensive. We're seeing people now from those coasts move to Kansas City, even greater now in a remote work environment. So while they're bigger cities, more important, they're not industrial manufacturing regions like we are here. And the cost of living here is so much better, and the quality of life, in my opinion, is better. You can visit those cities and come back home to Kansas City. So.
Like I said, I travel a lot, and I visit both New York and LA often, and I'm always ready to get home. It is so from an international standpoint, they're very large ports. From an ocean standpoint, they actually touch the water. Kansas City doesn't, so that's a unique issue, which brings back the railroads. And they have big airports. You have JFK, you have LAX. And so you have those things that, like Chris said, are really internationally recognized. But the amount from our perspective as a service provider is that the types of customers we get here in Kansas City and around the Midwest are customers who look for partnerships. Whereas when we start to get out to the coasts, we get a lot of very price-driven conversations. Whoever is the cheapest wins. So for us, we're always looking at opportunities to find those customers here locally and around town. And so, for us, our goal is to stay between the mountain ranges, between the Rockies and the Appalachians, and try never to get too much closer to those coasts, because prices skyrocket, and it's just not an area for us that's a lot of fun to do business in.
Do you anticipate once our new airport is done that will help your industry?
Absolutely. For us, it is the front door. When we talk about people visiting the Kansas City region, it will be a state-of-the-art airport with more capacity for flights for people and freight. And again, it is already generating interest by companies that might be corporate headquarters or office function that have to, like Adam, travel around. So we're extremely excited about the airport. It is on time and under budget. It's going to be an incredible asset for our region once it's completed in early 2023.
Great.
From my perspective, just the ease of travel in and out will be much better for me personally once we're back out there. And actually, Kansas City does have some international flights for passengers. And so one of the things that Kansas City, even in our current airport, has a new pilot program with U.S. Customs for how people move in and out of customs. So if you've traveled abroad and you come back in, there is a way that most of the airports around the country are built, whether it's Dallas and DFW. And Kansas City actually was one of the very first airports with a new pilot program. And they've reduced wait times in Kansas City from anywhere from 3 to 3.5 hours to get cleared through customs to less than 40 minutes. And so as individuals, that's really important. And I was actually talking to customs just a week or two ago, and they said their facility at the new airport is actually already constructed. It has walls and everything. So they will be one of the first groups to move to the new airport, which is really interesting.
Great, thank you. Chris, what is a favorite project that you have worked on or been able to accomplish throughout your career?
Boy, that's a hard question. I'll give you an example of a recent one. I mentioned Urban Outfitters. If you shop at Urban Outfitters or Anthropologie or Free People, they've got a variety of products. They're still run by the original founders that are very passionate about what they do, their environmental footprint, their sustainability, the quality of their products. And they're headquartered in Philadelphia in an old Navy yard. So a set of buildings and land that was, let's just say, had some environmental issues to it because of how much industrial activity happened there. Urban Outfitters came in, cleaned the site, and made it an incredible location. They were very engaged. They're committed to do, to Beth's comment, to do daycare at their facility for their workers. They're going to put a bus rapid transit stop in. They're just a unique client that has been passionate about why they're in certain communities. They've been great to work with. So that was a good one. I would say the automotive ones are always exciting to me because we all get in our cars and are able to drive where we need to go. It's fascinating to learn how they're made, where the parts come from, how that Ford and GM plant sequence those precisely on what you order on your car comes out, and they turn the ignition and the thing turns on. It's an amazing process if you get the chance to tour one of the plants. So I would say those two are probably the most notable ones over a few years.
Wonderful, thank you. Adam, we'll let you answer that in just a minute once he is gone. But I have another question for you, Chris. What was your level of education, and did you always anticipate going into this occupation?
No, I did not. I mean, I was interested in international business, doing what Adam does. That was my degree. A lot of my internships in college and early jobs were on that. So I was very interested in international business and travel and experiencing that. So getting to where I am now was a little bit of a change, but still very connected to international business. So it's still in that sector. I have an undergraduate degree in international business and marketing and an MBA degree, both of which connected very much to the international side of what I do. My MBA is from a small university in Jefferson City when I worked for the state named Lincoln University. And all of the graduate professors were global. They were from Europe and Africa. So while it wasn't an international MBA, it had an international feel to it. And there was a lot of conversations around that. So, and then I've got a handful of certifications in different sectors that also lend to the job as well.
Wonderful, thank you. And because you're getting ready to leave, we have a question from the audience. What is it like talking to customers on Zoom, which you're getting ready to go do? So before you leave to go do that, can you answer what that's been like?
You know, again, my comment about being intentional, you've got to embrace that this is how we do things. Looking at people on these weird screens and different boxes is what we do now. You've got to be alert. You've got to be aware. You might think you can make facial expressions or turn your head and nobody's going to see you, but they see everything. They know what you're thinking by your facial expressions. But you know, the Chewy.com, we started that and ended that in this pandemic. Everything was virtual. They looked at real estate. They interviewed people for the jobs. They talked to community people and me, all virtually. So it was, you've just got to accept it and embrace that's the world we're in today, and learn how to do it better than Columbus or Dallas or the communities we compete against. We've done social hours, we've done networking events on these, and they're all interesting, we'll just say, but it is the technology we're using now, and you've got to be good at it and better than the competition. So we've embraced it. We'll keep using it into the future as ways to interact with clients around the world.
Great. Thank you so much, and good luck on your next call.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry I have to leave early, but keep focused on this path in your school. And again, Natalie and Beth and Amy and the others are great resources for you as you move forward. And Adam, good to see you again.
As always, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
All right, Adam, back to you. What is a favorite project you have worked on?
Oh man, we've done some really interesting things. So probably one that actually made a few news outlets, which was a long time ago, back when the plaza in Brush Creek, we actually delivered the, can't think of the name of the boats, not canoes, but that were going to run up and down Brush Creek. So there's a picture of our truck sitting in front of the plaza lights, delivering some boats down there, which was kind of interesting. We did probably 5 or 6 years ago, there was a guy called Jetman that went around on a jetpack. And so we actually helped him move his gear around the world from Australia to Europe to the US, and let him participate in his shows where he would fly around with his jetpack, and then we would get him packed up and shipped off to the next destination.
Sounds pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I know you mentioned this was an internship that led you to a job, and Beth and I, in both of our jobs, that's kind of what we do, is we lead students internships. We want them to learn all kinds of fabulous skills. So what do you recommend students that are on the call? How do they go about finding those internships on their own if they're not in some sort of class or program that will help them find that?
It's a great question. When I got my internship, I was lucky. One of the people who worked at our company at the time had gone to the same college I went to and reached out to one of his old professors and just asked him to send him 3 people. And I was one of those 3 that was chosen. But we still run an internship program today. It's very, very important to us. And we always look really highly on all of our interns, just in general, simply because when we go out to hire somebody, it's probably the hardest thing that we do. How do you hire somebody? How do you get the right fit? And if you've interned for us, and I really think this goes with any company, we have a good idea of who you are, what kind of a worker you are, what kind of a person you are. And if we think you fit, if we have a job opening, oftentimes we don't even go outside of our intern pool and we just offer a job to that we never posted externally. And then how to go about finding them. We try to post on local universities, like we'll reach out to them and say, hey, we're looking for a couple of interns. We do a lot through Kansas City SmartPort, Chris's group, where we'll reach out and they have a very large mailing list that goes out to a lot of the local universities. There is here in Kansas City, I'm the chair of what's called the Kansas City Heartland Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals. So we have a local roundtable that is really big in sponsoring students to go to the big EDGE conference that happens every year. We do some scholarships for college. So there are a lot of places around town that have a lot of internships posted. And for us, it's fun to reach a little bit more local, because one of the things that we've always liked is a lot of times we'll have an intern work over the summer. And then maybe depending on how their college curriculum lines up for the semester, we might be able to then keep them on part-time through the year. So they get a little spending money while they're going, they get some work experience, and we get a lot of time to train them. So when they're done and they graduate, we have a really good idea of the next employee that we're going to bring into our company. And I guess when you asked what's the hardest thing that we've done since COVID, and I probably missed the biggest one, which is hiring. It's been the single hardest thing. I hired a marketing department during this time. So it was really interesting. Everything was done virtually. Usually when you interview for a job, you go and you get to see the office. Where am I going to sit? Just really basic things. None of that happened. And so it was just an interesting change in how we do things.
Well, speaking of interview tips, is there a tip, one single tip or a couple tips that you can give to students that are going to be applying for jobs in the near future? And what do you look for in an employee?
The biggest interview tip I can give you is be yourself. Because we're all going to figure out if you tried to trick us, right? If no different than your teacher's going to figure out really quick what you're capable of. It's no different. And so we're going to find out really quick. So we tell everyone be themselves. And I think for us, that's one of the things that we look for, someone who is just themselves. And usually when you're yourself, you're comfortable and you can just have an honest conversation. And as far as a skill for us, people ask me this question all the time. And for our company specifically, it's really hard to find, but it's an insatiable curiosity. So for us, it's really important for people who constantly want to learn. Our business changes daily. And we have a saying inside of our company, which is better person, better professional. So we really want our employees to go out and do training to make themselves better, because ultimately it does impact the company and they become better employees at the end of the day. So my biggest interview tip is just be yourself and be willing to learn. And because those two things from all the people I have interviewed, from all of the hires that I've made, that I want to say, yes, I made that hire, to all the ones that I still shake my head at today, that what in the world was I thinking? Those two things really hold true. If you are yourself and you just have this curiosity about whatever it is, because it really does apply to the work that we do.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
In relation to high school students, I know you talked about internships. Do you allow high school students to intern or just come and job shadow if they want to see a little bit more about the logistics field?
Job shadow, absolutely. Internships are, depending on age, can be a little tough because of the businesses that we are in. Everyone has to go through a full background check. And so we need people to at least be 18 so they can say, yes, I can go ahead and authorize someone to go look through my background. And even then it gets really interesting. Some of our summer help comes in and wants to see what it's like out in the warehouse. And so we always have to be a little concerned with insurance and things like that, making sure people are old enough. So for us, it's 18, and that's kind of our number. It makes our insurance company a lot happier. It makes it much easier for us to run background checks on everyone just because of the type of information that we have. And, at the end of the day, we do business with the Department of Homeland Security, and they have their own rules and restrictions that we have to abide by.
Great.
But as far as job shadowing, you bet.
Awesome. Great opportunity. One last question before I think we have to wrap it up probably. But when you sell internationally, are you able to use translators? That is a question from the audience.
It's a great question. So English is the international language of business. And so most places that I travel, I speak in English. There's a big but here though. So I do not always have a translator with me. If I have someone within the company that speaks the language, I often try, if they're able to take them. Because what tends to happen is you might be in a business negotiation and everyone's speaking English. And all of a sudden they turn to the people sitting on their side of the table and they speak in their native language. And I have no idea what they just said, which makes a negotiation interesting. Probably one of the most fascinating things in speaking about translators and language is every time I visit Mexico, there's multiple meetings, and I always take a translator in Mexico with me, but there are multiple meetings that are done completely in Spanish. And my Spanish is poquito, which is very, very little. And every time I'm there, the company that we're visiting always apologizes for their lack of English, which I've always found really interesting because I am visiting their country. Their language is Spanish, but they're apologizing to me because I visited them and they don't speak English, which to me has always just been really fascinating. And it really humbles you and reminds you that you're not the center of the world. And I have friends now all over the world, and we talk about English a lot, about, oh, they don't know the word for this or word for that. So it's a lot of fun sometimes talking to them. And there are certain words that translate no matter what happens, that you don't need to know the language, that someone's not very happy with you or vice versa. But what's interesting is when you talk to someone and say, I was talking to someone in Brazil where their language is Portuguese, to someone in mainland China where it's Mandarin, and they're both trying to speak English to one another. And so they say that is actually the most difficult, is when you have two non-native speakers trying to communicate in a third language. And so, when I've traveled in Europe, I've never had any issues. When I've traveled across all of Asia, I have never had any issues. Mexico's really been the only place where the English-Spanish divide is very different than it is really throughout the rest of the world.
Great. I'm sure that is difficult and made more difficult via Zoom.
Yes, it definitely can be. The downside of not being able to travel over there is meetings in China take place at 2:00 in the morning because that's what time they take place. if you're on that side of the world, you don't realize it's 2:00 in the morning at home.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Adam. I'm going to turn it back over to Beth now.
Yeah,
Thanks, Natalie.
thank you. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. Adam, I appreciate you being here and giving us all kinds of good insight into your business world. I do want to remind everybody to take a couple minutes to do the survey that should pop up on your screen when we're finished here. Also, if you want any more information on any of the speakers or the sessions for today, you can go to the NEBA website, which is www.nebaworkskc.org. Again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our audience. Have a great day.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Natalie. Thanks,
Bye.
Amy. Bye-bye.